Is Western Mass News on ABC 40.
A Massachusetts man tied to 6 stabbings and a homicide in Connecticut over the Memorial Day weekend was arraigned earlier today in Plymouth. Welcome, everyone, to Western Mass News at 4 on this Tuesday. I'm Chris Pisano. Western Mass News reporter Wesley Days joins us now live in studio with a timeline of the incident and a look inside one of the courtrooms where he faced a judge. And Wesley, this is an hours-long crime spree spanning multiple states.
It was, Chris. Jared Ravizza arraigned on a variety of charges specifically tied to some of these incidents earlier today that you just talked about. Now, this is video from inside the courtroom as Ravizza pled not guilty to multiple counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon and assault with the intent to murder. The judge also ordered a psych evaluation where a doctor later stated Ravizza suffered from delusions. They were then sent to Bridgewater State Hospital. Police first got involved with this incident back in Connecticut after a reported disturbance at a home in Deep River around 3:30 Saturday afternoon. Now, that initial incident led police to Maritone Lane, where they found 70-year-old Bruce Feldman outside. He was suffering from visible injuries. He was later pronounced dead at that scene. Officers say they found personal items tied to Ravizza at that scene. They were able to get a description of Ravizza's car and alert other law enforcement agencies. Now, by that point, Ravizza was well on his way to Massachusetts. Just a couple hours after that first incident, Ravizza was connected to a stabbing spree at the AMC movie theater in Braintree. 4 young girls between the ages of 9 and 17 now face non-life-threatening injuries. Listen to what one of their mothers of the victims had to say about that attack.
My oldest was leaned over to get something. He got her in the back, and then my other daughter in the top chest, and then my last daughter across her arm, laughing the whole time, and then got their friend and then ran off.
Rampage did not stop there. By 7 that night, Ravizza was in Plymouth at a McDonald's at the Route 3 Service Plaza, where an altercation led to a 28-year-old McDonald's employee being stabbed through the drive-thru window and another 21-year-old employee being stabbed inside that restaurant. Now, when it comes to the 4 stabbings of those young girls, he'll face a variety of charges there, including 4 counts of assault to murder in Quincy District Court. After he's released from the hospital, charges are still pending for Ravizza when it comes to that Connecticut homicide that we first told you about when we first began our broadcast. Now, tonight at 6, we hear from 2 people who have dealt with Ravizza in the past. You'll hear their shock at that situation. Reporting live in studio, Wesley Days, Western Mass News.